welcome to Evolutionary Men. I'm your host, Jason Lang. Let's get started. All right, and welcome back, everyone. I am super pumped to have another interview today, this time with Ted Riter, who is a spiritual guide, relationship coach that helps men, women, and couples unmask their truth and deepen their connection to self, others, and the divine. He's a former rabbi with over 30 years of sacred leadership and now leads transformational experiences from his wisdom circle for men to intimacy intensives for couples and high achieving women. And it's really cool. His work weaves ancient wisdom with modern embodiment and invites people into integrity, love, and a life that feels spiritually and relationally whole. And yeah, I'm super excited to be here with you today, Ted, because yeah, man, we've been sitting in circle together for, I don't know, almost 7 or 8 years now.
Yeah.
And you've been a major landmark in my guide as a man and a mentor and just vision of what an integrated man can be. And there's something I particularly appreciate about you, which I think we'll dive into here, and that you note a little bit. We noted a little bit in your intro, which is the sacredness you bring. That, there's a lot of Instagrammable men's work these days, and there's a particular depth and actually spiritual component that I often get to experience through you and my relationship to you. So I am super excited to have you here today, man, and figure we can just dive in.
Let's dive in. 30 years. That's a long time.
A
I mean,
really long time.
I know I wrote that, but 30 years. Yeah. And I'm more and more appreciative of it as time goes
Mhm.
on. When I stepped out of, and you knew me during this time, I was kind of stepping out of the full-time rabbi world and
Yeah.
into coaching world and into intimacy world. That I kind of pulled away from, I didn't want the rabbi title. Who wants to talk intimacy with rabbi, I thought, or who wants to go, do like good men's work with a rabbi. That's my own kind of stuff that I was carrying along. And then over the last number of years, just really appreciate it even more. And I think especially as I see so many of our colleagues who are trying to find their roots, right? They're trying to find their Celtic roots or whatever it might be, to find some kind of grounding. And some are really making beautiful connections, but I recognize that they're having to leap over a number of generations prior to find real, like, the depth they're looking for. And there's something around seeing them doing that and then recognizing, oh, like it's here. It was handed to me by my parents, not by some far back ancestors, and just feel lucky. I feel really lucky that my exploration hasn't had to go those routes. Even though it's
Yeah.
certainly deepened, it hasn't had to jump over generations. So,
Yeah. And, I'm curious, maybe you can speak to that a little bit in terms of your personal journey. What got you into men's work specifically? Because it's not the most obvious jump, right, from your tradition. And, maybe it's changing, but from what I know, it's not like everyone's lining up to do this kind of embodiment in men's work and spiritual intimacy that you do. Like, how did you get into men's work?
kind of by accident, really. Um, I've had a spiritual director, the same spiritual director, for about 18 years now, something like that, maybe a little more. And we meet on a regular basis, and he's started men's groups. He's written a book about men's groups. He's done all kinds of things around men's groups. And I was with him for a good 8 years before I even wanted to talk about it. I mean, even though he was right there supporting me in
Uh,
so many ways. It was not until really I I collapsed my life that I knew in 2013 and started digging out of that I realized I needed something else. And a woman I was dating actually brought me to a John Wineland event, to a co-ed
mhm.
event. and he was doing it with Kendra at the time in Berkeley, and I went there and I thought this is ridiculous, and but I stayed because I was there with the woman I was dating who knew him personally, and then a month or so later I went back to him and said, okay, I think you've got something that I need. I need to learn
Mhm.
more about masculine, feminine, all these different dynamics that he was talking about that seemed so foreign to me. And so that's when I started hopping on those calls for that proto EMLT, right? The embodiment leadership training that we did together in. Oh no, you were 2018, right? I
18 is
started.
my first year.
So this is 26 into 2016 that we
Yeah.
started doing the calls, and then the program started in 2017. And I realized really quickly, one was that I didn't trust men. I had this view of, the real men were kind of just the evolution of that jerk from sixth grade locker room, right? And I didn't want to be him, right? So I had pushed away from that, and it was then that I realized, oh, I I didn't trust men. I was fearful of men, and that was kind of the cauldron I needed to be in to really stretch that part of me. And I'm pretty convinced by this point that if I had been in men's groups, so if I had asked my spiritual director 18 years ago, like, "Hey, man, like, can you tell me more about this?" That uh, that my first marriage would have ended much differently than it did. Wouldn't have been so messy. Maybe it wouldn't have ended, but it certainly wouldn't have been as messy as it was. I needed men. I just didn't know it. I needed men who would challenge me lovingly, not just the jerk kind, but to challenge me from this place of, hey, I love you and I want more for you, and this is what I see for you, and kind of shake me. So that's what got me started, and so started with John, worked privately with a coach Zat Baraka, who was you know both the EMLT and working with Zat privately was really a lifesaver for me in so many
Yeah.
ways, and it really helped me redevelop who I wanted to be in the world.
Such an amazing story. And yeah, that right, I heard this Terry Real term, how he calls it carefrontation. One of the great gifts in men's work is right when we confront with care, like it's
Yeah,
of care we're confronting. And I think that's a real potent thing in men's work and men's groups, and something I've been delighted to have received from you. Just one of the
and
loving
from you.
things you'll sometimes, just hold your finger on the button for a little bit until it's like clarity emerges with these kind of loving confrontations sometimes. And it's been such a gift to me in my life, and often just made me think about things at a deeper level and slowed me down. I think that's another thing I appreciate about sometimes my interactions with you. Of just like, tell me more about this. And it's like, yeah, it really forces me to get clearer in, where I'm at, which obviously that's such a masculine gift, clarity.
Isn't it? Isn't it?
When we
The,
get clear
the,
in
other,
that regard.
the other big thing was our friend Robert Glover.
Yep.
I was told in 2017, go read this book. And I started reading No More Mr. Nice Guy. I started
Yeah.
yelling at the book. like, like, how dare you for knowing me so well? And I
Yeah.
realized that so much of it was my language, or language I needed. And I called him up and said, hey, I want to come study with you. And so yeah, started that relationship back in 2017 also, and recognizing that I wasn't the only one. I guess that was a big thing. It wasn't just that I needed men, but I realized that I wasn't the only one who needed men. I wasn't the only one who had all these fears of being in men's groups or being around other men, or distrust, or a lot of the nice guy stuff of holding these things back because if you really knew me, right, you wouldn't love me.
Yeah, totally.
So
Yeah, I'm
that was
curious
informative too.
for you, what comes to mind you spoke about your previous marriage, and now you're in another relationship, and one was kind of before men and men's community in your life, and one is now you've had men and men community. And what way have you seen that change, impact your intimate relationship? Because something you put a lot of time and attention to supporting men and couples around, but how would you link that, you now being plugged into men, to the quality of your intimate relationship with your partner?
I started dating Leslie around the time I started working with John.
Yeah,
Do you know my feminine cleanse story? That he
I'm not sure I do.
John told me to do a feminine cleanse because I was dating a couple women just very casually here, date here or there, and so there were three of them, and I said, "Hey, I'm going to do this crazy thing called a cleanse, and I may not see you again. I'm going to, say goodbye to all the women in my life, other than like my sister and my mother, or people
Mhm.
who are more transactional in different ways. But I'm going to really cut off all kind of energy like that." And two women were heartbroken and and a little mad. And one woman said, "Wait, but you're staying with this guy named John Wineland. I thought he's supposed to be an intimate, like a relationship coach. Aren't you going to need a practice partner?" So that's my wife.
Yeah, so great.
So, but I say that because I think it's so important. We started our relationship as practice.
Yeah.
And I think that's what doing this men's work taught me, that 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 we commit, we often fail, we recommit, right? That we deepen and ground and root ourselves so that we
Mhm.
can hold our own feminine and we can hold their feminine. We learn to dance with those energies, and having a place where I could experience that with my Leslie, who ended up being my wife, was super important. But the connection back to the men's work was that's where I got a lot of the tools.
Mhm.
That's where I got a lot of the tools that broke down those cultural or family, whatever lessons that I had learned along the way about how we were all exactly alike. Men and women were, you know,
Yeah.
mirror images of each other. It helped me start to understand just the beauty in differences and how to navigate those. I think also the men's group was the place that I really grieved. And I
Mm.
really grieved how I had shown up for the first 40 plus years of my life and worked through a lot of the shame, both the sexual shame that I had growing up and through the marriage and how I ended the marriage and the shame around that. So, in order to go into my current relationship in a clean manner, I needed to cycle through all that stuff, cleanse all that stuff from my own body, not just my head, because rationally I could do it all. But it's how as I was storing it
Yeah.
all in my body that I needed to really metabolize it all, to let it go so I could show up differently for my wife. And that I don't think there was another place I could have done it. Maybe some therapists, but it was really the
Mhm.
power of a men's group
Yeah.
because it was a bunch of men. It wasn't just like one person I was talking to who I was, paying to be my coach or my therapist. It was a group of men who didn't really need anything from me. I didn't owe anything to them, who were able to reflect back and to hold me.
Mhm.
I mean, I remember this one time we were at a retreat in Amsterdam, and we were around a fire at night, and I remember totally falling apart, like not being able to stand, and having two of my brothers hold me and just hold me as I sobbed and as I grieved, as I mourned for everyone I had hurt, for how I had felt hurt, how I had hurt myself, my former wife, my daughter, everyone. Um, I can picture that. It was years ago, but I can picture. I can feel the heat of the fire. I can feel the two guys. It was Morgan and Soma holding me,
Yeah.
and wow, what a gift! What a gift!
Yeah. It's such an incredible transmission because that's, I imagine not only in your own journey, but, rabbi now as a men's leader, work with a lot of couples, men in particular. And I see this in guys I work with all the time. Whether it's No More Mr. Nice Guy, whether it's some of the stuff from Way of the Superior Man and John, or, any kind of shadow work, when the illumination happens to, oh my God, I can actually see now consequences and impact. How I was showing up and how my former lover or spouse or my children. And right, there's such a unique threshold there of the pain of feeling, wow, I really contributed to this. Certainly it was for me. And, maybe some shame or some, if I had only known, right? Oh my God, if I had only gotten this work when I was 25, and, a certain energy with that, and the simultaneous, we were all doing the best we could. We didn't have these tools. It's like this dance of, being kind in that, well, we work with what we were given, and most of us weren't modeled, particularly great skills in this arena. And so there's that acknowledging or taking responsibility, for how we impacted, but then also, I guess in some sense, forgiving self. Well, there's only so much use, I mean, you've witnessed me and my shame over the years. There's only so much use in the continual lashing.
Right.
I should have, that at some point, I think men's work has really been profound for me, and kind of lifting up out of, well, I didn't know, but, and then this is where the power of the group is. Now that I know and I see it, now it does become my responsibility to make sure, you know, in whatever ways I can, I restore harmony to the situation, or don't fall back into those patterns and get help, from guides and counsel and brothers, particularly the peer brothers. I think that's what I heard you really speaking to is, you know, I'm certainly pro therapist, pro coach, and there's something different that happens when you're in that peer circle. You've accumulated experience and, in some sense, less of a hierarchy and more of a brotherhood in it, that really can penetrate through, or at least has for me quite often.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. So you touch. There's so many little gems and all the things you said um, that part about, yeah, stop beating yourself. But
Mhm.
all these things I think are on a spectrum, right?
Yeah, good
Of
point.
responsibility, and and there are some people who are very quick to say, "Hey, they did the best they could with the tools they had." That was a really important thing for me to learn. My parents, my friends, or me myself, I was doing the best I could with the tools I had, and and there's something around not punishing someone for something they didn't know.
Yeah,
Right.
totally.
There's a that's a
That's such a good
really
way to put it.
well, I actually, that was Abe's. That was our friend Abe who said that once.
Yeah.
Don't punish me for something, or maybe it's something about me. Don't punish me for something I didn't know. Like, oh, that's really cool. Um, but the idea of they did the best they could with the tools they had, or I did the best I could with the tools I had. There's a beauty in that. But I see some people who jump to that really quickly, almost as a bypass. So
Totally.
it's really, both are important. Both the, let me grieve, and let me even feel shame. I mean, there's a value to shame on some level.
Hey, shame.
The shame, um, or guilt, which is I think a healthier nuance of that, of self blame. But the guilt and the shame, let me feel that. Let me really sink into that, And let me also hold this part over here of, and I was doing the best I could with the tools I had,
Hmm.
or that person in my life was doing the best they could with the tools they had. But because I see a lot of people in kind of the conscious community who just jump
Yeah.
to the best they could, and
Yeah.
there's a there's a there's a gift in that, but they're missing the truth that we need to sit in the grief. Um, we need to sit in the celebration too. I mean, it's the whole array of feelings. Those are all good. Sit in them for a little while. Um,
So yeah, it's so true. Talked about that before of one of the interesting red flags I've come to notice when I'm just getting to know men who might want to work in a group or something is the pretty good childhood. And then they kind of immediately go to, and something about that almost always points to this kind of spiritual bypass that are like, I bring to forgiving my parents because I know they were trying. And it's, again, it's not that we don't want to acknowledge that, not punish them, right, for things they didn't know. But I think the danger, what I have seen is if we then ignore the impact, it makes it much harder to feel that grief or that frustration. And then it's like a false forgiveness because we haven't really metabolized it. They were doing the best they could. And the way they raised me, the experiences I had, whatever, had a massive impact on it and who I am. And I'm now having to deal with the consequences of whether it was intentional or not. I sometimes joke, um, if you and I are roughhousing in the backyard and I accidentally hit you in the head with a bat, right? This is my thing. It's like, you still want me to say sorry, even if I didn't do it on purpose,
right,
right? It's like, oh my God, sorry I hit you because it still hurts. It
right.
hurts no matter what. Whether my intention was to hurt you or not, it's like, oh my God, I'm so sorry that that happened. I didn't want that to happen. I think there's a part of that here. And I do see nice guys, right, in particular, fall prey to this and the not wanting to really point the finger at all to they were doing the best they could. It was their generation. I also see this all the time now. Still curious if you do with even just spanking, which I consider child abuse. And when I talk to guys and I put it that forward, they're like, "What? No, like that was just the kind of thing at the time." I was like, "It was the thing at the time, and it's hitting your kid."
Yeah,
That's my personal opinion. But there's something, but there's like such a, but it was kind of the thing then, and yes, and feel what it did to you, your relationship to pain or men or fear.
yeah. I know that story. Um, yeah, I had to process that in my own upbringing. You know,
Mm,
I've never done that with my kids. Right? I had to process that with my own childhood of like, yeah, that's what people did. And, the severity of it from 1 to 10 was pretty low physically, but I
yeah,
still remember it. I still,
really.
I still remember that switch of bamboo that would come out. Yeah. Or fly swatter. That's kind of just gross. You come to think about it. Fly swatter. Like,
Sure, yeah.
that's on so many levels. But yeah, I've had to process through that. And there's part of it of, hey, they did the best they could with the tools they had, bypassing those feelings, which is really just, I think, a discomfort with discomfort.
Mhm.
And I think often what happens is if I'm uncomfortable with my own discomfort, then I'm going to try and negate yours.
Yeah.
Like, okay, you cried, let's move on. Okay, I said I'm
Mhm.
sorry, let's move on. It's like I want this thing to end so we can get back to peace. So it's a good practice just to be able to sit in the, oh wow, this hurts, and then to be able to sit with my daughter, my son, and, oh, this hurts.
Totally.
Yeah. Even if I wanted to, I couldn't fix it, but it hurts. Let's just sit there.
I'm going to be with you in it.
Hmm.
The key there of present with you in the pain rather than trying to. get rid of it, dissociate from it, medicate away from it, or change it, or make you wrong for it. That's a big one too. That I've had to learn as a parent. What my kid needs is just for me to be present with them in their feelings and not rescue them from them. Huge edge for me as a nice guy, in my relationship, and now as a parent as well. Of ooh, okay, I kind of have to let you have your experience because it builds inner capacity, but you don't have to do it alone, right? Alone in your bedroom. So many of us did because our parents just didn't have the skill set, the awareness, around a lot of what we're now present to. And I think I have a particular passion now as a father, and the two young ones, and then on that end, and then the men's work on the other end. It's like, if I was to do a, a moonshot kind of thing right now, I would spend like $2 billion on 0 through 5 for kids, because a lot of the work I now get is from men who spend decades unwinding some of this wounding that
Just
happens
those
so early
early
in life.
childhood things. Yeah. Yeah. And that's not even counting the intergenerational stuff. I mean, I'm a real believer in epigenetics of the things that are passed from prior generations. It's not even our story that we're holding on to. And yeah, it's another billions moonshot for that one, right? But you think back of all
Totally.
the trauma, right? Think back of all the trauma, and looking back at trauma through history and thinking, like my father was Vietnam era, and prior to that, right, Korea and World War II and World War One and this country's Civil War, and you go back, most
Mhm.
every generation had some kind of big traumatic world event.
Yeah.
So no wonder we end up with all this in our lap. So we got to start.
Totally. And
And hey, it keeps you and I in business, right? So
yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, I think what's key about that is, I mean, you're steeped in a lineage and a tradition, and I'm probably a good example of someone who's not, in a sense that I was raised kind of Midwestern, Sunday morning Lutheran, Christian, never really kind of anchored in a sense, but that you know, I would argue the best lineages we do have in some of the traditions where, hey, what are some of the ways we deal with our grief or our pain or some of these traumas communally? Because it's pretty friggin' hard to do alone, right? And as that has kind of dropped out of Western culture, and so hyper agentic here in the States of what's the American dream? Oh, I want to live alone in a house with a lot of property and a white picket fence and never have to see anyone. I can, there's some great gifts to that. I get the impulse sometimes, and it's not at all how we process so
and
long.
yeah, and that's one of the places where I love Jewish tradition.
Yeah.
In There's so many things in Jewish tradition that require a minyan, which is a quorum of 10, and
Hmm.
uh, a funeral requires a minyan. So you can't do a funeral by yourself. Saying that there's a tradition, the death practice in Judaism is really beautiful. This is not what I thought we'd talk about today, but I think it's really beautiful, and it ties in to this idea of community. Because I want to talk. We need to talk about initiation also. So in Jewish tradition, we help bury our own dead. We clean their body. It's a ritual for cleaning their body. We bury them ourselves. We put some of the earth back into the ground, and we're surrounded by 10 people, or I guess 9 other people, and through that say our prayers. We continue to say those morning prayers of mourning, MOURN, for a full year for a parent, and then yearly, a couple times a year actually, ongoing, and always part of community. So What we often see in the kind of conscious, I started to say community. It is the conscious community, but it's not a community. In the conscious movement, I would say, is a lot of individualism. Losing, I think, the importance of what does it mean to be part of something bigger than yourself? Great, you're doing all this personal healing work, but how does that actually impact the rest of the world? What's your purpose in all of this? And um, and I think that's really important. It's something I think we're not seeing a lot of, even in men's groups, for that matter. What's your responsibility to this larger group?
Hmm.
After we finish, the last day of this month, we finish our group. Like, what? How are you still
Yeah.
connected? Was it just a one and done kind of thing? What have you been initiated into? And I think it's a big question that most I'm not seeing a lot of people grapple with. What are you being initiated into? Not just
I
manhood,
love that.
but really, traditional initiations were not. Oh, great! Now you're an individual. It's like
Yeah, totally.
now you're an adult who has these more responsibilities and more
Yeah.
opportunities, perhaps, but you have to think beyond yourself, which is such an important lesson. Your kids are really young, but you've been with enough, you know, kids as they've grown up to see that there's an age where we hope they start thinking beyond themselves.
Hmm.
They start thinking about their siblings, they start thinking about their family, their community, their world. And that's, I think, where the initiation should be going. How do you take that step into bigger responsibility in the world, um, and recognize you're
I
part of
love
something
that
bigger?
because I think that also connects to something I see in a lot of men I work with, which is some of the kind of depression and loneliness and isolation comes from a lack of feeling part of, right? Like I'm actually part of a system in some extent that needs me or that I have some responsibility to. And it's kind of it's like the pathology of the hyper individualism of like it's probably more doable now than ever before to be a hyper free man who has no connection or obligation, or you just order everything off Grubhub. You don't even have to see people,
Right, right.
right? uh, but that breeds, I think, a kind of depression, which is both from, I would say, community in terms of people, and I know we through John and our work, and also just through nature, like when we're actually disconnected. I'm not part of the land. It does something. It does something. And as men get immersed back into that and realize, oh, wait, there's this whole thing that I'm an intrinsic part of and that I actually have an impact on, it starts to bring something back alive. And as we see that in our local communities and families and stuff, I think that's so big too. And to me, that's one of the main gifts of being part of a group, is this kind of belonging and purpose thing that can get activated where, in a good group, right? If you're not there, I feel the impact of that. Or, if I'm not there, you feel the impact of that because it actually does bring more depth to my life. And the groups I've seen thrive and survive and the ones I'm part of and have helped create, there is like it's not a light agreement we're making joining a group in a sense, right? Where there is something I would, word gets used a lot, but sacred to it in that there's a real commitment there that means something of commit to showing up to you in whatever ways. The container is going to be different, but that I think a lot of men actually are missing. And as they start to feel it, it's powerful. And there can be a shift. I've had to work with a few guys around what I kind of call feeding the meter. There's a certain kind of guy that sometimes shows up to men's group just when they really need something, if they're in crisis.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's like, well, are you feeding the meter the other times? Like, because that, I maybe you heard, I know this, but I'm pretty sure there was like some crazy study that was like the thing that actually is the most fulfilling and makes us feel the most rewarded is not even when we receive kindness, but it's when we offer kindness and it's received. Then we're like in the relationship, right? And it's like, wow, I showed up for you and I served you in this way. Now I feel deeply connected to you is even more connecting. Some of the research shows that, wow, people showed up and served me. And that's, again, one of the gifts I think of a men's group and something that's been totally blowing my mind. I moved cross country recently and rejoined a men's group I was in previously. And these guys are fucking to the grave. So they are talking about, we're going to start to die together, over the next decade. That's a very different kind of context than I've ever been plugged in, having been outside of, lineages and traditions and strong communities in that sense. And actually quite relaxing to me in a way that I was shocked about, to be able to start to talk about these things and not fear that in the same way. So it's I was really fascinated that you brought that up and kind of started to connect it all together.
Yeah, I love that you're talking about this. I have a new group, new cohort number 6. Really excited about that. The Wisdom Circle that starts Wednesday, so in 2 nights, and I've been interviewing all the men for it, and really pressing the importance of showing up every time, feeding the meter, as you said. The last cohort I ran, it got loose. It started to feel kind of. I mean, I think the guys got a good experience out of it, but for me as a leader, I could see there was just so much more, so much deeper we could have gone if I had held it tighter. And it was my fault. I kind of let the guys off the hook. And I think part of it is because I knew some of them from outside, friends coming in, and my nice guy stuff. I wanted to be the nice guy and not be a hard ass. And I let them off the hook. And I think that we suffered, but yeah, we suffered for it. I think they all had a good experience. A number of them are coming back. But in the conversations I've had leading up to this new cohort, I've really stressed, hey, how important it is to be here. I require now 3 things. It used to be just 2 things. It used to be a willingness to be vulnerable, which is not necessarily a facility of being vulnerable, but just a willingness. And then we'll kind of teach you how to do it. And then what I would call a generosity of practice, meaning that when the other guy is being vulnerable, I'm a hell yes. If you need me for this, I'm going to be generous. Even if it doesn't really feel good, awkward, whatever, I'm going to show up for you. But the third thing, which I've recognized I have to add, is you got to be there. It's something I
Yeah,
always took for granted until I realized, oh, guys are calling, 5 minutes before, hey, something important came up. Like, no, something more interesting came up, or something that was going to protect you from being vulnerable came up, or something that whatever came up.
yeah,
You know, emergencies certainly happen, but it was just feeling like these were non-emergencies. And so a guy asked me the other day, he said, hey, I'm going to miss one of these 12 sessions. Is that going to will it be hard for me to catch up? And I said to him, yeah, I don't think it'll be hard for you to catch up, but that's not necessarily the point. The point is what you were talking to about earlier, Jason, this idea of, if you go vulnerable, or someone that in that group really just pours their heart out or whatever it might be, and then you don't show up the next time, it just feels bad. And that's like, you gotta feed the meter. You gotta stay in the mix. Um, yeah. Otherwise, just don't show up. Thank you. Bow. Goodbye. And maybe next
it's
cohort.
like it's again, we both work with a lot of nice guys, and it's also one of the interesting manifestations of some of the challenges around boundaries I see, that it's like, if you can't make the time to be here for yourself, that's the whole jam, in some sense, where it's like learning to prioritize where I put my attention, right, is really demonstrating what I'm committed to. Yeah, I love that. My local groups I've sat in, we had to get pretty strict, where it's like, yeah, it's not an emergency and you're in town, you have to be here. There's no, I don't feel like it today, or there's too much work. It's just like you got to be here. And there's always going to be exceptions then, but that's kind of the we want to stake the deepest claim we can and create an expectation because it does. I've noticed it too. It gets leaky. One person skips and then two people skip. Then you can feel people aren't quite valuing it maybe as much as you. So that's, well, why should I fucking show up if I'm not going to show up? And then it just gets leaky and then groups dissolve pretty fast
And so here's the
without
gift.
that commitment.
Here's the gift. In a men's group, a good men's group, they'll challenge you about it. You know, what was more important than showing up? Explain to us what was more important than showing up. Um, you know, you owe us $100 for not showing up. Whatever it might be, there's a consequence to it, which doesn't exist in other parts of your life. So you don't show up fully for your wife or your kids, and they kind of shrug or they may be disappointed or whatever it is, but they let it go
Yeah,
and they let it
totally.
go and they let it go until it just hurts. And it just becomes, well, yeah, dad was never really there for me. Or my husband, I don't really feel connected to my husband. And so in a men's group, like we're not doing our job. I wasn't doing my job. We're not doing our job if we're not really holding them accountable. We're doing a disfavor to their partners and their kids and their colleagues and whomever else is out there in their life. Um, because not showing up or showing up half-ass, I mean that's possible too. Like I'm sitting here,
Absolutely.
but my
Yeah, but I'm not
mind is
actually
like
here.
it's
Yeah.
way out there. It's I'm like looking at my phone when no one's watching, kind of thing. Um, it creates a ripple, and I think that's one of the biggest lessons for me in some of this work is that we create a ripple everywhere we go, and in some cases, every place we don't go. Right? It's like a negative absence of ripple or whatever it is that's felt like, oh, where are they? But that's one of the things I really try to teach is that when you walk into a space, you're creating a ripple that you need to be conscious of. You don't actually have to change it. I mean, sometimes you can be okay with it, but you need to be conscious that you're impacting other people. So I did this practice with my daughter for a number of months. She was maybe, I don't know, 13, 14 at the time, and kept saying really judgmental things about people. Oh, look at what they're wearing. Oh, look at da da da. Even just like that kind of the stranger judgment,
Yeah.
which she was doing from a place of humor, right? And there were some funny parts, and I realized, wait, I wanna see if I can adjust this. So I started talking to her about, okay, when someone wearing some whatever bizarre clothing, I mean, we're in the Bay Area, so not so not so unusual to see someone walking in with just like really something outlandish. Um, recognize them, but then notice the people around them. Like, what's the ripple that they're creating? Because I want her to become more conscious of what's the ripple that she's creating in life. But rather than judging them, use that opportunity as like, oh, here's a little flag. Like, oh, let me look around. And who in the restaurant, in the grocery store, in the theater, whatever it is, like how do they turn? Even maybe they look, maybe you just see them kind of move their body, not even knowing why. And really, just to start recognizing what's the impact that you have. Own your impact, even if you're good with it, right? Yeah, I want to turn heads,
Totally.
right? Or I don't, or whatever it might be. Just
Bringing that consciousness to
be
it.
conscious of it. And so it's the
Mm.
same thing with showing up for my daughter or my wife or my son, and really be thinking about something else, right? Or bring in some kind of energy. Like what's the impact I'm having? Is this who I want to be right
Yeah,
now?
I love the ripple thing because it's something you were one of the men that helped train me in. Like literally, how does my body move through space? And what is that going to do, when leading a workshop and people are deep in work? It's a real thing, right? And as you become conscious of it, it's like, holy shit. A lot of times, I'm not super tall, but I'm like 6'1", and I had to get conscious of my body moving through space can be a big body compared to some people. And it was one of those awarenesses that struck me over time. But the thing I really love about what you were pointing to around a ripple was the both sides of it in terms of, you know, um, you could also say like wake, if we're thinking of like a boat in the water or something. There's kind of the negative aspect of I'm just fucking got my motorboat in the lake and I'm not paying attention and I'm making it a mess
Right.
for
Right.
everyone else. But there's another thing maybe close to that, which is, you know, how we can own our impact, like you were saying, and our responsibility of sometimes creating that ripple is actually leading the way. It creates like there's then people can ride my wake, and that's something I've been noticing a lot. Um, like my wife saw something. I've been on a health journey, this last year, and she saw something. It was just like how couples, their BMI tends to sync up in terms of body mass
Makes
index.
sense. Yeah.
And if one couple changes it, often the other partner will just, without even consciously trying to change their diet or anything, suddenly they just kind of sync up. And I think that's something I see in a lot of men, that I work with, and I imagine you too, of, that maybe they feel lost in relationship or they want their partner to be a different way or the sex isn't good enough. And one of the places of power we have is, well, maybe I should go first, right? Maybe I can show up to a circle and a man can guide me deeper into myself or give me some new skills. Once I'm embodying those, oh, then maybe it's worth seeing kind of what happens or if this relationship's going to work, et cetera, before it's like, oh my God, you got to be different. You got to be different. But, I've had the temptation to do with my partner for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. And we do see some people who step into these groups, both men and women, right, doing whatever kind of deep work on themselves, whether it's therapy or coaching or some kind of group program, and they recognize, oh, my partner isn't on this path, and there's great ways to lead them, right? Sometimes, as you say, like they just naturally, like their BMI follows, or you're going through your motorboat on this wake, and like they're in this little floaty, and they're like, oh, this is fun, right? They're
Totally.
just enjoying the ride. It may have worked out beautifully, and sometimes there's a place of, oh, we're just on a different
We're different.
trajectory in life,
Yeah.
which I see happen sometimes.
Totally.
There's it's sad. There's great there's ways to lead your partner back into it, but sometimes there's a recognition of this is a different path we're on.
Yeah. We're not a fit.
Yeah, yeah.
And that,
So
again, I think where the wisdom of the group can be so useful of, oh, am I cutting the ripcord too early? Or, yeah, no, you really showed up. And, partner is just not in that growth orientation or mindset or willingness. So, yeah, it's quite impressive to me every time I'm sitting in a wisdom circle. You say that the quality of attunement and feedback I get from the men when I'm trying to suss a decision or something like that out, pretty accurate. It's pretty wild, right? How people can kind of feel like, you kind of haven't done your thing yet, or
yeah, yeah,
like, no, I think this might be time for you to make a transition. It's not changing, and we've witnessed, and you can trust us in that sense.
yeah. And trust is the thing. Um, for for real embodied work and transformation, it's not always going to solve the problem the way you want it to be solved, right? Um, so you can't be attached to outcome. If I do this, my relationship is going to be great, or I'm going to make riches, or I'm going to do whatever. But really immersing yourself is an act of trust that I'm going to grow. I'm going to be more aware. I'm going to grow. I'm going to create new, healthier patterns. And and my hope is that everyone around me will love it. And I trust that whether they love it or not, whether we're still on a path or not together, that this is the direction to be going. That's kind of scary.
Totally.
Kind of scary. We don't. I can't guarantee anything for men who start my men's groups, nor I'm guessing you. Um,
Yeah. This conversation yesterday.
yeah, yeah.
And it's
What's
it's
the
hard for
ROI?
guys.
What's the ROI on
It's,
this? Like, I don't
I don't know.
know.
You got to do it for you, right? I mean, it has to be for you that regardless of the outcome, you want to do this because you want to take control. You're showing up again, right? It may not work out, but there's something different to I really can feel in my body, in my bones. Showed up. I gave it all I had. I tried. I put it out there. I changed things on my side. And then it's a different kind of freedom, right? When something doesn't work out, not certainly for me that, well, I didn't really fucking do it. So I don't know, place I would often get stuck. Okay. I went for that. That did not work. I put everything, I really tried, but okay. So now I can let go of it. That just wasn't a good fit relationship, working partnership, or new idea, right? For a program. It's something I've had to get used to. If try stuff, some of it works, some of it doesn't. And
Seemed like a good idea.
take it personal.
Yeah. But
Uh,
if you look at the arc of it, I can tell you that my life has improved immeasurably.
yeah, same
Just
here.
just this weekend, Leslie, my wife, and I were talking about, wow, this is the life we created. We created it. It wasn't the default one. It wasn't the I'm just living at the effect of the world, right? It was really like this is the thing we created, and it doesn't mean everything is always rosy. You know, we have the same challenges I think most people have in life, and wow, what a beautiful life this is. And I'm so thankful. The woman that introduced me to John and Kendra's event is not in my life, and I'm so grateful that she introduced me to not necessarily to them, but to a different way of approaching life that has, you know, been so beautiful, powerful last dozen years. Um, so thankful that I am where I am. And yeah, sometimes I look back and I see the guy who's in his mid 20s doing some of the same work. I'm like, wow, like
Yeah,
your
it's
whole
like,
brain isn't even fully formed yet, right?
yeah, right.
Right. And then I look at the
So
guys in their
true.
70s who are just discovering the power of real deep work and think, okay,
Never too late.
this is where I am. And yeah, it's never too late. And so, yeah, love doing this work. Got to meet you through this work. Pretty happy
Yeah,
about
such an
that.
honor and pleasure, and and be mindful of time. So we'll start to wind things down here. But I'm curious for men, mostly I have male listeners, but sometimes some women too. For anyone that might be interested in keeping up with you and some of the, I mean, you do some just kick-ass work and programs. What's the best way for people to follow you or get a hit of what you're up to?
I don't do a lot online. So I do some on Instagram. You can check me out at Ted Riter Talks, Riter, one T in that name, Ted Riter Talks. And on internet, tedwriter.com, I have programs for men that are primarily here in the Bay Area. I'm just starting to think about, okay, it's time to actually do some retreats. But right now they're in the San Francisco Bay Area. And I do other programs with couples that often people fly in for. So do little retreats here and there. And then mostly just one on one. And really are loving that. I'm actually going up to Tahoe right after we get off for a little mini retreat with a client. And if you're looking, I'm there. Come find me.
All that in the show notes. Definitely worth a follow, y'all. Ted's wisdom is deep, and we barely scratched the surface today. So do it again sometime, my friend. But oh, great being here with you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Always a pleasure.
Till next time, guys.